But we were recording now. Hi, it's Thomas Cox. Thank you all for being here. Delighted to have you. I am the Master of Ceremonies for our little event here, the Institute of Management Consultants, Pacific Northwest, Oregon, and Washington chapter. And allow me to direct your attention, please, to this little tool right here called Slido. Slido is a tool I'm going to be using to poll all of you at various points during today's presentation to solicit info from you, whether it's what you most want to get out of this presentation or what do you want to see in future presentations. There's all sorts of questions I'll have for you. And in order for me to ask them and get the answers in a format that I like, I'm going to force you to use my system, or you can just opt out, but you can go to slido.com in a web browser and just type in the 6 digits. You could point your phone at the QR code and take a photo and bring up your camera, and it'll prompt you with the URL, and you can answer the questions on your phone. There's lots of ways to play. And I will offer a moment for us to do that. While some of us are faster than others, I would also invite our illustrious leader, Chuck Roxon, to say a word to the assembled faithful about his vision for the chapter, what it's like for him as the new president, or any other remarks that he deems appropriate on this occasion. Chuck Roxon, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I just want to welcome everybody today to this event. I'm really excited about it. We have 2 great speakers again and a very interesting program. If any of you are not members of the IMC and you want to find out more information about it, please let me know. Anybody who's a member, who's a certified management consultant also would be more than happy to answer questions about what it's like and what the future holds for you. And also, I just want to mention that this fall, we have our ConsultCon coming up. And if you want information about that, you can do it virtually. Let us know, and we can make that information available. Without any further ado, Tom, let's get right to the meat of the program.
I shall make it so, as you request. I will prompt you with the very first question, which is, and hopefully this will activate on your phone or in your web browser. It'll ask you, in one word or short phrase, what would you most like to take away from today's presentation / presentations, plural? I'm asking this cold without reminding you what the topic is, because I'm wondering why you're here. And there must be something on your mind, or you would have found other things to do with your 90 minutes to 2 hours. John's doing the phone route, I see. Excellent. And so 2 participants are typing. We see that on screen. Gives us play-by-play action. Three people are, 1 person has answered, 3 more are typing. Actionable marketing, good cybersecurity probably protocols, I'm guessing was the full word there. There's a character limit in the system. Defense. I should probably answer too, shouldn't I? Since I'm also here. Visibility and safety. Nice. Okay, that's not quite the full gamut of people who are here. We've got 14 participants and I'm seeing 12 answers, but that ain't bad. So I'm going to call that good enough. And let's see, what is my next question? It might be, oh, that's the wrong question. Sorry, I'll have to go fix that later. So let me instead discontinue my sharing and tell you about our first speaker, who in a mere 10 to 15 minutes is going to tell us about the repeatable, reliable system he created for networking, marketing outreach, and lead generation. The man in question, Mr. Michael Ryan. Michael, would you care to begin?
Excellent. And is it okay if I share my screen and the
I would-
materials
I
that
would-
we prepared?
I would love it ever so much if you would do that.
All right. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So, Thomas and I started talking a few weeks ago. We were connected through a mutual connection on LinkedIn, someone who I think very highly of, a woman by the name of Jennifer White. And as Thomas and I got to speaking, one of the things that we landed on is kind of the concept of communication and networking and building visibility. And I shared with Thomas my story about the networking group that myself and a colleague put together, and I'm happy to share that with you here. So the group that we built is called Middle Market Networking, and what we'll do pretty quickly here is step through what makes our group different, how the group evolved, how the group has continued to evolve. And, my favorite part is the do's and don'ts, right? These are the things that we learned along the way that if I can help save somebody some time and angst and aggravation moving forward, I'm happy to do it. So, one of the questions is, why build your own group? Why should you invest in, ultimately what will be a good amount of time? And really, what I had figured out was, for me, the other group that I spent a lot of time with is called the Association of Corporate Growth, or ACG. ACG is primarily focused on private equity and deal making. And, while I have a fair amount of clients who are private equity, that group was really more about finding and connecting deals. And what I had noticed was that kind of everybody always knew each other in the room. So when myself and my colleague decided to start the group, it really helped us by defining, who are the right people, who are the people we want to connect with, and ultimately, what the spirit of the group is about is helping create value for others. And, our motto is just helping good people connect. And it's getting over the idea of, if I build this group, I'm going to get a ton of work out of it, and shifting to a mindset of, if I build this group and help other people prosper, right, it will naturally come back to me. I am a firm believer in the abundance mindset, that the pie is big enough for everybody and everybody can have a slice. So, what we've done in building this group, really, it started out, my colleague, Jason Kugler, he does factoring. So factoring is, you're going to get paid in 90 days, but you need the money faster. Factoring provides you that cash faster. So when I first got connected with Jason, the idea of the group was beer, networking, and good times. And while, right, I think everybody likes to network and everybody, looks to have a good time, it didn't necessarily kind of put the best face forward. And, we've been at it, oh gosh, just over 4 years. And, really what I like to point to is, as we have these events occasionally, definitely not every single event, but, I'll put up a post on LinkedIn and thank the sponsor and thank all the people who participated in the event. And, it's neat because we've created an environment where it's invite only. It's not, kind of random Joe or Jane Schmo who's going to show up. It's everybody is connected by somebody they know. And, one of the benefits of this and being the organizer of the group is, we transitioned a couple years back to having sponsors really offset part of the cost, part of the investment. And, we're at a point now where we've got sponsors lined up and booked throughout the back half of the year. So, we started out as kind of a very small group initially, almost by word of mouth, and now have built it into a group where we've got 200 plus people on the list, and we rotate the attendance for the event, so it's not the same 25 or 30 people every single time. So, how we've done that is, and one of the things that makes us unique is that we are very, very, very highly curated. And what that means is it's not like we just cast a wide net and send an invite out to 200 people and cross our fingers and hope that people show up. We've put mechanics in place that help us, well, quite frankly, kind of pack the room or pack the list. And pre-COVID, we would have events that were 65, 70 people, which was great. It was more social than networking. And going throughout COVID, what we realized was, we were literally forced to start with a smaller group and then build back up in terms of how many people we could have in one spot at one time. And we found that really the magic number is about 30 people. And with that, you can have conversations, you can talk to all the people that you want to talk to, and, still meet new people at each event. And
you say curated. I'm not sure if you have a slide for this or not, but when we talked about this, you said your host basically sets the theme, and we'll take a pass through your list and pick about 16 names, and then the rest will be kind of the rest of you guys picking names. So there's like a focus, there's a theme, there's a purpose to the meeting and who's there.
Yeah.
Is that, am I over exaggerating that aspect?
A little bit. It's not so
Okay.
much that there's a theme. The idea is that we've built this list, we've curated this list. And, for example, if the sponsor is our sponsor next month is what we would call a super regional accounting firm. So they are, a big accounting firm for Ohio, and 90% of their work is in Ohio. So with the sponsor, probably the easiest way to say it is they get first dibs. So we share the list with the sponsor. We say, hey, pick 12 people, pick typically 15 because 2 or 3 won't show up. Pick 12 or 15 people. If there's somebody who's not on the list that they would like to add to the list, whether it's a current client or a prospective client, add them on the list. That's one of the ways our lists grow. And then myself and my my other co-hosts, as we call ourselves, pick the rest of the list. So the sponsor has a pool to pick from. If there's other people they want to bring to the pool, that's fine. We consider it one of the privileges of sponsoring. So that's how that's how the mechanics work. And in terms of sponsorship, originally it was myself, Jason, Nancy Valentine, the 3 of us would split the bill, and it got pretty expensive. So, we kind of realized once we had people approach us, hey, I'd love to sponsor this. What do I need to do to sponsor? I think it started out at $250, and now sponsorships are between $500 and $750. It really depends on the venue and it depends on the sponsor, but the sponsor typically picks up half the cost, and then myself and Nancy and Jason split the rest.
At one point on here focuses on good people, not insiders. Now you got a pretty curated list and you're mostly picking from it, but it also sounds like you're looking for that new person, the person who isn't already part of the old boys club, but has some hustle or some moxie or something.
Yeah, and it really is, one of those things, Thomas, where when you see it, and that it's not, so like with using ACG as a proxy, it's not the same 30 people every single time. Gotcha. Typically, it is people who are, I would say, executive level and above. It could be a principal in a private equity firm,
buyers and influencers, whatever that might be,
buyers and centers of influence, and
connectors.
Really, it's connectors, and that really is it's helping our networks really just kind of weave together. And one of the nice things about the sponsors, or having sponsors, is they introduce us to people kind of outside that first connection or outside that second connection.
Right.
And it's I'll say it like this: it's not just a bunch of old white guys standing around, right? We make it a point to
Nice.
It's really, quite frankly, it's on the merits, right? If you're a good person, we don't care what you look like.
Mike Egan's got a question for us. Michael.
Yeah.
Could you define what you mean by middle market?
So the way I define middle market really is businesses. I typically go by a revenue. So anywhere from 50 million to 500 million in revenue, I would characterize as middle market. Below 50 million, I would call it lower middle market. And, once you get past really the 300, 400 million, that's upper middle market, kind of bordering on public company size.
Gotcha.
That's top line, right?
Top line, yes, thank you. Yeah. So, as I kind of alluded to earlier, the middle market network started out as beer networking in good times. And, the guy who I partnered with, Jason, he was lamenting the turnout. We were at an event, there was like 14 people, and I'm all about process. So I said, Jason, describe your process to me. And he goes, well, I just send out the calendar invite. I'm like, okay, well, how many people do you send it out to? And he's like, I don't know, 150. I said, well, how do you know who's coming or not coming? Well, it's all if they, accept the invite. I'm like, okay, you can't plan an event like that. It's just right. You could, but it's not going to create the desired outcome.
And he's clearly not happy at this moment anyway.
Wasn't happy. So,
right.
So the way we did it is we set it up where, we had people opt in. So people who had already, attended an event, we had them opt in. And then as new people were invited, we created a process where we save the date. We send a save the day out, save the date out. People have to respond to that in the affirmative to get a calendar invite. And then from the calendar invite, we do, week of the event, we do a reminder to confirm attendance. So it was really going from, what could be called loosey-goosey at best to putting together really almost a scripted cadence of what we would call touches. Every
Nice.
time we reached out to the network, it's a touch. So save the date, calendar note, reminder, follow up to the event. So each cycle creates 4 touches. And that's one of the things that helped create some attraction for sponsors. It was,
Right.
a way that they could get their name out in front of people.
They could tell you were being methodical and organized.
Very much so. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
So, and this kind of at a very high level is the process. The font in purple, that's the communication. So these are the 4 touches that we put out. And, from that, it's really just a cycle that it's like lather, rinse, and repeat. And it's, working with the sponsor, picking the list, sending out the save the date, creating a calendar invite, and only people who have responded to the save the date get the calendar invite. So, by default, let's say, if we're putting together an event, I'll send the save the date out to probably 40 people or 45 people. Of that, I will get 35, high 30 responses, and then those people get the calendar invite. And, Jason and I have kind of developed, we know how far to overshoot.
Right. Slightly overbook the flight.
Yeah, slightly
there's
overbooked because there's always
Gotcha.
going to be, hey, we've got something going on with the kids, or I'm out of town, or I'm with a client. So,
Gotcha.
We've kind
What about this connections email on the far left as we go
Yeah.
around the loop?
So up until really after, the event and after the event, people aren't informed who else is coming. This prevents it from, oh, I want to see it. If Jane's coming, I'll go. But if Jane's not going, I'm not going. Right. It's
Yeah.
like, no, I'm
Just
not playing
cut that
game.
off. Go
Cut
talk
that
to
off.
Jane.
So the idea is, up until the event itself, nobody knows who, other than people talking, right? Nobody knows who's coming. And then the people who show up at the event, let's say we have 32 people scheduled to show up, we'll probably get 29 or 30. There's always a
Nice.
last minute cancel. everybody who was at the event, I then send an email where everybody is CC'd on the email. So the email addresses are shared.
Nice.
And it's, here's the person, here's the name of their firm, and their email. And the idea is, hey, if you didn't have a chance to connect with somebody, now you have the means to connect with them.
Brilliant.
And part of it is setting the expectations that, right, this isn't just get dumped in your CRM or mailing list, because if that happens, then you are gone, right? We don't do that.
Okay, so if someone
So-
starts spamming the list, you're going to cut them off.
They're gone. Yeah.
Boom, gotcha.
So
Well, by the way, one last thing on that slide, you have feedback loop. Is that a
Yep.
separate step, or is that the identity of the loop itself?
that's it's a separate yet equal step. It's
Okay,
whether it's at the event or after the event, I'll get a call or somebody will pull me aside at the event. Hey, Eugene's checking pulses, right? Checking pulses is somebody walks up, they shake your hand, the other hand, they check you for a pulse, and then they, try to jam a card in your hand or say, oh, we need to have breakfast. It's like, dude, you don't even know my last name. Why am I going to have a breakfast with you? So,
okay. So someone who's playing some low connection, high numbers, spamming
yeah,
type experience is going to
we
be
weed them
removed.
out pretty quick,
Gotcha.
because that's right. Really, it's about building relationships. It's not about, hey, I'm going to see if I can sell tonight. It's about building the relationships and figuring out in what ways you can help other people in the group.
Got it. I'm sorry for all my questions because I'm running you past the
No.
end time.
No, it's good. So I will, so sponsors, do's and don'ts. This is my favorite. This is what used to drive me crazy. So up until maybe a year ago, Jason and I kind of had an unwritten rule that if you don't respond to the save the date 3 times, I'm going to quit asking you. So I was kind of venting prior to an event with my wife, and she's like, does everybody know what the expectations are? And I'm like, no. So I and it was funny because it was like a 6 or 7 or 8 revision email that went from a tome, multiple pages, down to about that much.
Nice.
And, basically a lot of it, quite frankly, is common courtesy. If someone invites you to something and you can't go, just say, no, thanks, can't go. We had problem with getting people to respond to the save the date, and that is no longer a problem.
Nice.
And, the idea is we rotate the invitations, and, those connectors who kind of become the cream of the crop, people who just by default help good people connect, they get more invitations. So you create more value, you get more invitations. That's really, it becomes like a perpetuating cycle of good people doing good things.
Nice.
And
Nice.
letting people know that when somebody in the group does connect them to a client or help solve a problem, we want to know, because we want to share that with the group and hold that person up as an example of the good work that they're doing.
Brilliant.
So really it's about creating value for others. And the moment somebody comes a mooch, starts draining the life out of the group, right, they get booted. And
Love it.
yes, we do have a blacklist of people that will never ever be invited back, because they create much more problems than they add value.
Got it. Brilliant. Anything else you need to share? Oh, obviously your contact info. Thank you for this.
No, you're welcome. No, I'm happy. Anybody wants to send me a note or set up a quick Teams or Zoom, always happy to chat. This is something that I believe very, very strongly in, and it comes down to communication and helping other people in your network prosper, because when they prosper, by default, you will prosper as well.
Brilliant. Any quick questions for Michael? I want to keep most of them to the end, because I by interrupting Michael, I ran him long, and I'm going to squeeze the second speaker. But if anybody has an urgent question for Michael that can't wait till the networking break. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to do a very quick screen share of my own to ask you the next question on Slido. And those of you who've just joined, Bill, Christoph, Jeff Mays, thank you for coming. Glad to see you here. Here's the next question that should pop up on your Slido, on your phone, or in your browser window, or whatever. Is what we just heard from Michael Ryan was his repeatable, reliable networking and visibility process. And my question for you is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how reliable and effective is your current networking and visibility process? And I should probably answer myself as well. I will unveil the results now that we're starting to come in. Up, a 1, a 4, and a couple of 3s. Okay. I have to reload my phone to get to the next question. Okay, a fairly mature crowd here. And then let's see, we've got 11 answers. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question since that's really most of the people here. By the way, folks who came in late, the way to get into Slido is you go to slido.com and stick in the 6 digits, and you see on the left side of the screen, or point your phone at the QR code, and you can get in that way. The next question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how helpful was Michael Ryan's presentation on visibility networking? Helpful is a subjective term. Did you get ideas that you can take into action? Was it a good use of your time? Outstanding. I'll leave that open for you to continue voting, but I'm going to stop sharing screen because it's time to move on to our second presenter. And I'm Mr. Peter Adams. So Peter came to my attention because we had a talk a while ago on how we can, do our own IT. But what didn't come up was, how do we protect our clients while doing IT related things? And that just blew my mind that there was a whole angle I hadn't even thought of. And so I said, Peter, can you possibly give us some guidance? And he graciously said, yes. So Peter, with no more intro than that, would you please take it away?
Will do. Share my screen here. Hopefully I can do this correctly. There we go. All right. So we can skip some of the stuff. That one I talked about me earlier. We don't need to do that. So we're going to talk about our personal cybersecurity practices and how those may or may not put our clients at risk, right? We don't want to expose our clients to any risk that they don't know about. Every time anybody has an employee, a contractor, anybody walks in that front door, they bring risk with them. The risk needs to be managed by the customer. We don't want to produce risk for them. So let's first talk about risk from your point of view. So are you at risk? So cybersecurity attacks happen daily. Small businesses are prime targets, primarily because they don't have the defenses that larger companies can afford, right? 60% of small and medium businesses close their doors 6 months after a major incident. So is this a big deal? Yeah, it is. It'll shut the business down. There was an increase of 424% of cyber attacks last year on small businesses alone. And most small businesses think they're too small to be a target, except the statistics are actually the reverse. And if you're a small business, you're going to spend roughly $1 million to try and restore your business to what it was before an attack. So if your clients are small and medium businesses, kind of as Michael was referring to in that mid-market space, if they're in that space, this is them, right? This is the risk they face. And you are a small business too. So these are the risks you face. So who are you in the world? Let's talk a little bit about how cybersecurity attacks happen. So first of all, they're not really run by people. There's not like a person sitting there trying to attack you. It's an automated program that's trying to attack you, and it's going to try and attack every IP address that's out there. An IP address is basically, so if you remember, I see most of us in our pictures, we're all old enough, we can remember the phone book. So the phone book translated names to phone numbers. If you wanted to call every phone number in the book, you could either start at the first number and just work your way through the list, or you could start at 1, call that number, increment it by 1. So it's now number 2 and call 2, right? And if you did that, you would eventually hit every phone number, every possible phone number out there. That's how attacks work. They're automated. It's not personal. Your IP address is the same structure as that for NORAD, the White House, Xerox, IBM, Microsoft, any university, any individual out there. We're all the same. Now, a little statistic for you. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, the number of attacks per day per IP address was roughly 2,500. Since the attack, it is now 3,500 attacks per day per IP address. That means you, me, everybody else, we're seeing that frequency of attacks. So it's, there's a lot of it out there. So what kind of data do we need to protect? Well, our clients have all the kind of classic data we think about. Social security numbers, finance, banking, HR employees. They often forget about intellectual property, which is very important. They may want to protect strategies, sales information, passwords, key cards, badges, and that kind of stuff. And really it boils down to whatever data they declare is requiring security, you need to operate like it needs to be secured, whether you think it does or not. Conversely, your personal data, what do you want to protect, right? The same kind of stuff. And I add vacation plans and medical prescriptions and stuff like that to the list. So why vacation plans? Well, if you publish when you're going to be out of town, I can tell you there are people who are going to know that, and you're going to become a target for physical theft or, burglary, break in. So don't publish your vacation plans. And, whatever data you think is important. You think the pictures of, your great grandmother are important, and they need to be protected. So why do people do this? What are they after? Well, they're after money. So they're going to take the digital assets that they go and steal from our clients and us, and they're going to sell them on the black market. Well, here's a little list of what things are worth. So next time you read in the paper about how somebody, there was a theft of, I don't know, say 3 million or 30 million credit cards from some vendor or somewhere. Well, now you can do some basic math and go, wow, 30 million credit cards. Somebody just made, a lot of money, That's a lot of money for what amounts to probably 5 to 6 hours worth of work by a human. Yeah, big numbers, big numbers. What if you got a complete medical record, $1,000 a pop, right? This is why hospitals are such a target and other medical practices. So we need to guard that information. They're going to convert it to cash. That's the name of the game. Or just like crime has always been, it's always about the cash, right? Follow the money. So common attack vectors. This is up here just so you can see the names that people give this stuff. I don't care if you remember any of this or not, but there's a lot of different vectors, different ways people get attacked. I'm going to talk about 2 of them because these are 2 that you're probably going to encounter. This is an example of an email, and it's a phishing attempt. Phishing basically means somebody wants to get you to reveal information or take some action that's going to gain them access to your environment or give them access to information that they can then use to gain access to your environment so they can then steal more data. So common themes, panic, right? So they're going to try, and they're telling you right here, right? The account deactivation, final warning. They want to instill panic, like, oh my gosh, urgency, right? You have to take action today. You have to verify your account, what action you want to take. Oh, I got to verify my account to stay active. If I don't do that, my email goes away. That'd be horrible. Oh, and they make it very easy for me to take the action because they just tell me what to do right there. So what they're trying to do is bypass our innate thought process and trigger us into taking action. If you think about the standard business emails you exchange with your colleagues and clients, this structure would never exist. They're not going to send you panic, urgency, and consequences and incite action. This is the hallmark of a scam. So pause, read the email, look for these clues. The fact at the bottom where they say verify now was misspelled, that is no longer a giveaway. In this case, it is, but it's no longer a giveaway. You cannot count on these email messages being misspelled. They may come on the letterhead or the logo. They may have look exactly like it's coming from the legitimate customer. So you have to be diligent and really look at about panic, urgency and consequences, and action. Okay, ransomware is the other one I want to talk about. So ransomware is, I think, probably the biggest threat to the small, medium business space out there. It comes in basically three varieties. And it used to be that, you know, one of your employees or somebody would go browse the internet, inadvertently download this ransomware virus. It activates by reaching back out to some home computer somewhere, usually in a country where there's no extradition treaty with the US, and then it activates and encrypts your machine. Okay, that's how that used to work. We can block the what I call the phone home bit, so the virus can't reach back to the mothership and get activated. So your virus may exist, and then your antivirus can scrape it off after it's been there for a while. Fine. Or we can go to backups and recover if your data got encrypted. We go to the latest good backup and we roll that forward. That's fine as long as there's a close window of time. But what if they delay informing you that you've been encrypted? What if they delay 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months? I mean, who keeps valid backups around for 6 months? And even if they did, you're going to recover your business to 6 months ago and lose every transaction in between? I don't think so. That's catastrophic. So what happens if you pay these guys? Right? You want to get your data back, you pay them? Well, on average, you only get about 65% of your data back. So what's 65% of your finance and accounting system worth? Where you're missing various pieces of your transactions? I declare it's worth pretty much nothing. You either need all your data back or you might as well not have it. So this is a real challenge. The latest variant of ransomware, I'm going to scare you all here, is the blackmail component. So when they are in your system and they have access to your data, they're taking a copy of your data so that if you don't pay them, they will then release that data publicly. So what would be your liability if they released, you know, HR information, employee information, payroll and salary information, your, you know, business bank account information, et cetera, et cetera? Oh, it'd be catastrophic, right? So this is a big deal. Now, the problem with ransomware, it doesn't look like anything. I can't give you any clues to say, you know, if you see this, then you need to, you know, be alarmed and take some action. You can't tell when you got it. Now, there are some technologies out there that we can apply that can detect the signature of your computer being encrypted before you can detect it. And if it sees that, it automatically isolates the computer from the network and shuts it down. But that's a bigger system tool. It's not something we as independent consultants are going to have access to, but it is something your clients probably have access to or could. So just think about that. So I'm going to transition a little bit and I'm going to talk about cybersecurity plans, because your clients probably have a cybersecurity plan. I don't care really that you know what one is, other than you know they have one. So their plan will talk about how they approach risk, the actions they want to take, how they should respond when an incident happens, how they vet contractors and employees. It has all kinds of information in it. When you are first engaging with a customer, I strongly urge you to go find their chief information security officer, called a CISO, and talk to them. Say, I'm a new consultant. Here's my practices. I don't want to, you know, increase your risk. What are your practices? How do I bridge this gap? Bringing this level of thought to their business will show up in a big way. Okay. The cybersecurity plan, it's unique to all business. I mean, it's unique to each business, but there's some real commonalities, and we're going to go through some of the commonalities. So, and the reason it's unique is because you take a framework like DFARS or PCI if you do credit cards, HIPAA if you're in the medical space, CMMC if you're selling to your government or defense contractors. So you take one of those frameworks and you have to adapt it to your industry, the market expectations, and the owner's, you know, sense of risk and how they want to manage all that. Right? Risk is managed. It's not eliminated, it's managed. So you can't get rid of risk, but you can manage it. So some of the best practices out there, and this is where you can really say, I do the following, right? I engage the client cybersecurity team and follow their guidance, right? I never store client data on my laptop. My clients set up cloud file shares instead, and they manage them, and they are the ones who control the file shares because it's their data, right? I back up my laptop regularly to the cloud and make sure my backups are encrypted. So what if you have client data on your laptop and you back it up? So not only are you now responsible for that data on your laptop, but now you're responsible for the data in the backup, right? This is liability I don't think you guys want. And there's ways around it. Set up a cloud file share. Have your customers set up the cloud file share so you can access it, right? You know, I encrypt my laptop and I make very certain I don't lose that encryption key. But if my laptop's encrypted and my laptop gets stolen, I pretty much have no liability for any of the data that's on it. Okay, I keep my operating system and my applications to the latest patch level by enabling an automatic update. This is more true in the Windows world than the Mac world, but the same concept still applies in the Mac environment as well. Keep your systems updated. Most patches and updates are all based on security issues that they have discovered and they make public. So once they make it public, the bad guys know how to write exploits for that. So you want to make sure you keep them patched and up to date. I only use strong passwords and two-factor authentication. So we're going to talk a minute about passwords and two-factor authentication, but this combination is the best, strongest security mechanism we have today to protect your accounts and your systems. And lastly, never connect to public Wi-Fi without using a VPN to connect to any secure site. So if I'm sitting in Starbucks and I want to connect up to my local Starbucks Wi-Fi, that's fine. But if I also wanted to contact my bank and transfer some money, that would be a really bad idea to do over a public Wi-Fi, unless I use a VPN to secure and encrypt my connection from my laptop to my bank. Okay, that same kind of thing works when you're connecting to your customer site or anything else. Be careful what you do when you're connected to public Wi-Fi. Okay, I threw this slide in here at the last minute because I thought this was really interesting. Social media. So I want to talk about this for a sec, because social media is basically a place where the bad guys prowl and look for information that they can use to leverage and gain access to your data. So, and I'm just going to pick on Facebook here as an example, right? If any of you have spent any time on Facebook, you've probably seen the question that pops up, figure out your porn star name or your Greek god name or the Norse superhero name or whatever, right? And you use a combination of things in your life, like the name of your first pet and the road you lived on when you were a child, right? So like Ashley Pembroke would be, my porn star name, I guess, right? So the problem with this is if you look at the answers to these questions, right? What does that look like to you? Aren't they the same answers you give to your secret security questions, like for your bank accounts, your insurance account, or your Schwab trading account or whatever? Yeah, they are. That's not an accident that those questions.
They're building a database of you and your answers to these things.
That's exactly right. So now the problem becomes a little bit bigger. You may know well enough not to answer these things, but what about your kids? Right? Because they can build a database based on the answers your kids give to things like this. So I want to throw that out there so we pay attention. This is a real problem. Those things on Facebook, that's not an accident that they're set up that way. Okay, we're going to play a little game around passwords. This is called How Long Do You Think It Takes to Crack Any One of These Passwords? And I'll just kind of speed through this because I know we don't have a lot of time. But if you have a 7-character password, it takes 200 milliseconds, which is pretty much instantaneously. If you make your same 7 characters, but you make it more complex, it'll go out to 22 seconds. That's a nice improvement, but 22 seconds is not nearly long enough. If it's at 8 characters, right, so it's a little bit bigger, but it's a standard common word, It's pretty much instantly. So any single word password that's in the dictionary is crackable instantly. And if you make it a little weirder, right, it starts to take longer. But the important thing here is length, right? Length. Length matters more than complexity. But once you have length, then you can add a little bit of complexity to it and get very secure passwords. So password strategies, how do we remember this stuff? So there's a couple ways to do it. I tend to pick a fairly long, complex root password, and then I will prefix it with maybe the name of the site I'm on, right? Or some initials from the site, or I might append it with something else. So I build on a standard password so I can try and remember my passwords. I've got probably 500 passwords out there. Okay, you can also use password reminders or password keepers like LastPass or passkey or any one of the OnePass, right? Those are also helpful in this regard. Okay, so common questions I get, right? How long, complex should I make my passwords, and how often should I change it? How can I remember? Okay, we just talked about passwords, so I don't need to repeat that. How often to change it? If you have a nice, long, secure password and you don't use the same password in multiple places, you don't have to change them, right? You don't have to change them if they're unique to each site and they're long and complex. That should be a relief to a lot of people. It is to me. Okay, do I really need two-factor authentication? And the answer is absolutely. Two-factor authentication is very easy to set up. You've probably experienced bad implementations of it as well as some good ones. The good ones, basically, you can go to log into a site, it sends a code to your phone, you can hit yes on your phone and boom, you're into the site. It's about that complex. It's pretty simple. Okay, two-factor authentication it's something you know, like your password, plus the second factor, which is something you physically have, which is your phone. The likelihood that somebody is going to have both your password and your phone to break into one of your accounts, it's possible, but it's unlikely. All right, they'd have to physically have access to your phone.
Or they clone your SIM card. They use them. There's been a series of attacks in the crypto world where they call the phone company, say, "Oh, I'm Peter Adams. I lost my phone here. I've got a replacement phone. Would you activate it?" And they stupidly do. And then the SMS messages to authenticate come to the hacker's phone because Peter's phone suddenly stops working. There's been millions of dollars stolen from that. It's a very targeted attack. That's very hard.
It's very targeted and it's unusual, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it exists and it's rare.
Rare.
Okay. So what's more secure, Windows or Mac? And the answer is security is more of a people problem than a technology problem. There are more attacks against Windows machines than Macs, but Macs are equally vulnerable. They're just not as popular. And if you look at the distribution of Macs in the world, there are many, many more Windows machines than there are Mac machines. So hence, there are just more people attacking Windows. What should you do if you've been hacked? Well, you should have at least the minimum rudimentary security plan, which is turn the computer off, call somebody. Right? That's your best defense right there. Call somebody. And the somebody should be somebody who knows something about security, whether it's your local IT guy, whether it's a professional or your nephew or your niece, I don't care, right? But call somebody who can give you some advice on what to do. I do suggest a professional if you've really been hacked, because this is not a time to be goofing around. You need to really know what you're doing. Okay. Is the cloud secure? I think the answer is yes. I think the cloud is significantly more secure than you could possibly be or any of your clients could possibly be. Unless you're dealing with the very largest customers out there. You know, Microsoft spends over $1 billion a year on cybersecurity defense alone. What business that we generally work with, including ourselves, can afford $1 billion per year on cybersecurity defense? Right. So I think the cloud's very secure. That doesn't mean all parts of it are secure. Right. So you have to pick and choose, and you have to know your vendors, and you have to read the license agreements and understand. but the cloud generally I think is secure. Thumb drives. So rule number one, if you ever find a thumb drive laying around, throw it away. Do not plug it into your computer. That is a very common way viruses get into your computer. Typically, if your customers have some sort of cybersecurity policy or anything like that, they will probably disallow thumb drives anyway. So you should honor that. If it's your thumb drive and you own it and you have it for backup and it never leaves your possession, that's fine. But if your customers disallow it when you enter their premise, don't use it. Okay. What's encryption and do I need it? So encryption basically uses a key that you give the computer, and then it literally encrypts every file on the computer with that key. It takes effectively no time. It's not noticeable. It doesn't look any different. It doesn't act any different. It's just now encrypted. So if your computer is ever stolen, you can activate it. If it tries to boot, if somebody pulls out a hard drive, if somebody tries to change the operating system, or they make an unauthorized change, it can trigger it so that it will ask them for the key. If they don't know the key, they can't get to the data. The NSA can get to the data, but it took them a number of years to figure out how to crack this. So it takes a long time to get your data. So how often should you back up and how should I do that? Well, I recommend at least a nightly backup, but it depends on how frequently your data changes. It's really a personal issue of how much data you want to lose or be able to recover. But I suggest nightly, and then I like to automate it because if it requires me to actually do something, I probably will forget and won't get done. So I like to automate it and I like to send it off to the cloud. So for consultants like us, there are various tools out there that do that. If you're a company, there are obviously very big tools to do that kind of stuff. Backing up to the cloud is not particularly expensive anymore, but it is very effective. And then I always get asked, what's the best, whatever in here. And really the answer to that is I don't know what the best is. The best changes all the time, but it's a matter of, what meets your needs, your budgets, your sensitivities. Make sure you do your research, look for things that are not placebos. And I know that makes it difficult because you have to kind of know some of the technology, know what you're talking about. But I guess the next one, right? Who do you call when you're stuck? Have somebody in your back pocket that knows technology and can help steer you in some of these decisions. So you don't have to spend a lot of money, but you do have to make some good decisions as you go through this. So some important takeaways. So you're a target. It's not about you. You should have some sort of a real plan. It can be a very teeny plan. It could be, like I said, just know who to call, right? Establish some sound cybersecurity practices. There are 16 recommended practices that I've included at the end of this presentation, which I'm happy to send you a copy of the presentation. Thomas also has a copy of it.
I do.
Good. So you should have those. Engage with your client cybersecurity department. Show up like you're a pro at a different level than your competitors will. And think about how you can bring value to your clients through your cybersecurity awareness, because it's something your competitors probably aren't doing. So lastly, of all the stuff we've talked about, what's the cost to do this? I argue the incremental spend is zero. What we're talking about is a mindset and diligence. We're not talking about buying stuff. I didn't say go out and buy new antivirus or go buy hardware or firewalls. I never said any of that kind of stuff. This is about thinking and being diligent about it. So that is the end of my presentation.
Outstanding, sir. Thank you very, very much. I've got a, let's see, what do I have to share next? I've got another Slido question for everybody.
Okay.
Let me pull that up. But first, there are some questions in chat and some questions in the Q&A function of Slido.
Okay.
I'm going to interrupt your sharing and start sharing myself. And the questions are, It's another bonus of Slido, by the way, is it will, it has two tabs, one for answering the queries and the other is for Q&A. Peter, I noticed that regarding passwords, you mentioned the length, but didn't mention numbers, symbols, capital letters. Is that significant?
Yeah, so I talked about length, which is the primary consideration. And then when you add complexity, complexity is when we add symbols, letters, change capitalization. Remember, space is a character. So anything like that adds complexity, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, so more complexity is better.
Yes, more is better,
Okay.
but
Excellent.
length matters more. So if you make your passwords so long and so complex that you can't remember them, so you have to write them down, then you have defeated part of security. So you want to make sure your passwords are long and complex enough, but you want to be able to remember it.
Right. It's no good to you if you can't remember it and type it in when prompted.
Right.
Is it correct to say that Macs don't have viruses, but Windows do?
No, Macs have viruses and Windows have viruses. They're just more of them in the Windows environment.
Gotcha. More volume. You mentioned that we should encrypt our laptops. However, heavy encryption like Blowfish are so heavy the performance gets tremendously affected. How do you suggest coping?
So if you use like BitLocker in the Windows environment, which is part of the Microsoft operating system, there is no noticeable effect
Nice.
when you're reading and writing the hard drive. It takes, depending on how much data you have, maybe 15 minutes to an hour to encrypt. It'll do it in the background and it'll be a little slow during encryption. But once it's encrypted, there's no performance difference at all that's noticeable.
Got it. Now, some other questions came through chat. I'll read those, but then I'll come back to this last one you see on screen. How do you sort real notifications that might be from Microsoft versus scam notifications?
So Microsoft will only send you a couple of notifications. Primarily, if you are late paying your bill, they will notify you. Otherwise, you pretty much will never get a message from Microsoft proper.
Okay. And then regarding Microsoft OneDrive, should we disable auto update that's mirrored on the laptop and only work on the version in the cloud?
That is a great question. And it really depends on your work practices and what you need to do, right? So the purpose of technology is first and foremost to make people more productive.
Right.
So if disabling that feature makes you less productive because you can't work when you're disconnected from the internet, then we need to think about a different mechanism so you can stay productive. And that then falls into the rest of your cybersecurity practices. So I wouldn't just blanket say you have to disconnect that. I would just be careful.
Got it. How would you vet a good cybersecurity expert? If I'm looking for somebody to partner with, how would I go about seeking them?
It's a tough question. It's particularly tough for the small consultant like us, not small in stature, but small in dollar willing to spend. A good cybersecurity person has a certification called a CISO or one of the other cybersecurity certifications behind their name. They charge big bucks for what they do. And it's very unlikely that unless you know one personally, that you're going to be able to get one to come work with you. So you're going to have to rely on your local IT shop. And probably when I do that, what I would be looking for is a couple things. Do they understand, first of all, that security is a personal practice problem more so than a technology problem?
Right.
And we can leverage bits of technology to mitigate it, but not eliminate it. Right. I would want to look for a holistic approach. It's a combination of passwords, two-factor authentication, my antivirus software, anti-spam software, right? So it's a combination of things. It's not any one thing. So that's probably how I would do it. And I would look and see, vet them out like you would any other consultant or person in your life. What do their customers say?
Right. I will add that we had our prior presentation in, I want to say February or March, was from a chain. I'll put them on screen. Team Logic IT, who are built as a franchise. My brother actually has a franchise. I'm not going to mention his name because that would be commercial. But I actually hired a different franchise myself before my brother bought his, and they managed my security, I think, competently. And this sort of an approach might be a good solution. Your mileage may vary, void were prohibited by law, not valid in Delaware and New Jersey.
Right.
But this might be an approach for some of us. This kind of managed service provider where they've got the scale to have good expertise, but also the retail presence to give you good customer service. At least for me, it seems to be a good balance. I pay less than $100 a month for full backups, and I have someone to call when there's a problem. He'll charge me by the hour when I call, but at least I've got a person to talk to.
Right.
But that's my answer to that question. Why have cyber attacks become more common with the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Primarily because they're attacking each other and we're collateral damage.
Oof. And when connecting to public Wi-Fi, there's a gap between the connection and actually turning on the VPN. Is that anything to be concerned about?
Not really, unless. So my thing is, when you start up your laptop, it's going to boot up. You're going to do whatever you do. You can browse the internet. You can do what you want to do. But before you engage in any kind of transaction or exchange of information that might be considered sensitive or private, I would make sure I have my VPN enabled by that point in time.
Okay, so it's not that risky in the sense that the question.
Correct.
Probably about.
So I don't want to. So first of all, I don't want to panic people like crazily, but approximately 1/3 of 1% of the attacks that are out there can infect your PC when it hits the internet before you take any action. So it's not nothing, but it's a very tiny percent. Okay. So could you be at risk just by turning your PC on? Sure, you can do that at home too. So, home or Starbucks or the plane or the hotel, I think you're okay, but I would turn my VPN on as soon as I wanted to do any kind of transaction or transmit any data, including email that had anything sensitive in it.
Right. Christoph asks about the YubiKey. I'm going to pause a moment and say it is after 5 o'clock. That is the end of our allotted time. I am going to stop the recording to keep the recording as a 1-hour recording and thank our speakers, but I'm going to hang out until the last person leaves. And we can keep asking and answering questions as long as anybody's here to do that. But that note, I want to say to Chuck, would you please close us out? And by the way, thank you to our speakers. Chuck, take it away, sir.
Peter, I want to thank you so much. My company does advise on cybersecurity, and we're helping with a couple of SOC 2 certifications. Everything you've said is just so right on. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And also, Michael Ryan, I really want to thank you for your introduction to another marketing approach that may be very right for people. And I definitely am going to check it out myself. Again, I wanted this to be an energizing hour and a half, and it was. My adrenaline is overloaded right now. So Michael and Peter, thank you both so much. And Thomas, for making sure we had time for everything. I'll see you.
Outstanding. And again, we're going to continue to be here, but I am going to stop the recording with a final thanks to our speakers, and please come back. We don't yet have an agenda for August, but the September meeting is at 7 a.m. because we have a speaker from England who will be talking about clean language, one of my favorite topics, clean language, 7 a.m. Pacific time in September. Look for an announcement. Thank you all for being here. Take care.